Hey, good morning, class. Welcome in. This is going to be our last discussion with Chapter 1, Unit 1. We're going to take a look at the foundations of democracy today. And I'm going to lay out all five of the foundations that we look at. Whether or not we have attained or achieved these foundations in full is definitely debatable, and it's something for us to think about. Okay, so we have a lot of good critical thinking with this particular lecture discussion. And you're also going to have a journal log, which will be our last journal log for Chapter 1. Next week, we're going to kind of shift towards our first test prep, and we will kind of review and we'll reflect, and I will kind of go over the expectations of what you guys will see during your tests. So let's take a look, though. Uh, the American concept of democracy resides with five foundations. Okay, the first foundation is a recognition of the fundamental worth and dignity of every person. So every person should have a worth, a dignity. They are their own person, and they should be recognized as such. Okay, so right off the bat, we say, hey, we want to make sure we recognize everyone as an individual. Okay, so with that being said, everybody being their own individual, the second foundation is that we respect all of these, and the goal is to attain equality for all people. Okay, so equality, regardless of race, religion, gender, that is in our democracy. That's one of our foundations. Now, again, whether or not people are reaching this and we're getting to this goal, that is definitely up for debate. Okay, we have this notion of a faith in majority rule uh, and an advocacy for minority rights on public matters. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit more. We'll expand upon it in just a moment. There's also an acceptance of the necessity of compromise. Yeah, compromise has to be a huge goal for us as a democracy. It's something that we need to talk about. It's something that needs to get ironed out, especially in Washington. So compromise is vital. Okay, and then also an insistence upon the wildest possible degree of freedom. We're going to take a look at how much freedom we have and how much freedom we can, have in this country within the framework of our laws. So we will take a look at each of these. We'll also talk about our free market enterprise, economically speaking, and how we adapt to that as well. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the worth of the individual. Uh, so again, democracy revolves around the importance of the individual. Remember, one vote, one voice. So we as individuals have that power. We have the power in a democracy as opposed to a dictatorship, as opposed to a monarchy. In a democracy, we have the power. Okay, each individual, no matter what his or her station is in life, is a separate and distinct human being. All right, dignity and worth is an overriding concept in democracy. We value the individual, or at least we're supposed to. Okay, we're supposed to value the individual. However, the welfare of a few individuals may be subordinate to the interests of the many in a democracy. So what this means is that people can be forced to do things whether they like it or not. Okay, so even though we are individuals, we have our own mindsets and mentalities. There are situations where we still have to do certain things, whether it be paying taxes, whether it be registering for the draft, or participating in jury duty. We do have requirements, and those are things that are, that's where this whole concept of individuality, liberty, and freedom kind of come into play. And we do have, again, some things that are going to force us into situations, okay, and we have to adhere to those particular situations. Okay? All right. Let's take a look at equality of all persons. So, democracy stresses the importance of equality for all individuals. All right. The concept of equality insists that all are entitled to equality of opportunity and equality before the law. So you have the opportunity to become whatever you want to be and to be successful in any kind of profession that you want to be in, and to have a individual life that is fulfilling and that has meaning. All right, you are also, all right, entitled to equality before the law. So when you go into a particular court case, you should have an equal representation. This situation, individuals should not be held back based on their race, their color, their religion, or their gender. All right, and despite all these ambitions, all right, it is clear that there are still flaws in our nation when it comes to equality of all peoples. So one of the things you're going to be taking a look at in the journal log is kind of putting your input and putting your opinions on things, maybe particular court cases or scenarios where you are not seeing equality. So again, we have all these things on paper, but are we really achieving them? That is up for debate. Okay? All right, this is important. Majority rule and minority rights within public matters. So when crucial questions arise, the only satisfactory device democracy knows is majority rule. Okay, democracy argues that a majority of the people will be right more often than wrong. Okay, so sometimes when we have a class vote in a democracy setting, in a direct democracy, that's where we say, okay, majority rules. All right, majority of the class decides, hey, we want to go outside for class today. It's nice outside. Majority of the class decided that. There were a few within the minority in that voting sector who said, no, we want to stay inside today. But in this instance, majority rule is the decision, and the decision is we go outside. Okay? Democracy does not say that the best decisions or conclusions occur when majority rule applies to public matters. So it's not always the best decision. Okay? Democracy does admit the possibility of mistakes, and this happens all the time. But understand this, the process of experimentation when fixing problems is never ending, okay? Always trying to figure out how to solve a particular issue. Okay, one thing that comes to mind for me, at least in this state, is the condition of our roads, okay? Regardless of whether it be a conservative or a liberal in office, this constant problem has been there for the last 20, 30 years in Michigan, and for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be getting fixed. So, again, we had to experiment. We had to figure out different ways to adjust to particular scenarios. All right. However, majority rule must be held in check. If majority rule constantly wins out without a minority voice on a particular topic, then that means there's too much power involved. So the minority on a public matter, all right, must have a voice. They must provide criticism and offer suggestions on how to improve that matter. The example I'm going to use in the journal log is, I know that there was quite a big debate a few years ago when our high school decided to install the twin turfs for our athletic facilities. Now, a majority in this particular community said, "Hey, yeah, we're going to vote on it. We're going to have the twin turfs. We want to approve that." But there were a minority of people involved in the community that were a little bit concerned environmentally, and again, clearing out a area of forest. What kind of damage does that do to the environment? So you have a situation where their minority voice on the topic, all right, those concerns should still be brought to the attention of the majority. Okay, and that happens for all of our public policies. Okay? All right, a necessity of compromise. Okay, in a democracy, decision making is often a give and take process. Compromise must be found. All right, this is the blending and adjusting of competing views and interests. All right, so compromise is essential for two reasons. First, the individual must be first. So the individual must be put first, and our individual rights and needs must be met. Second, public matters will have several opinions, thoughts from each side of the aisle. In order for progress, those sides need to cooperate. Now, I will say this. Any casual person that looks at how our government is right now will understand that the left side of the aisle and the right side of the aisle are so far apart on nearly every single issue, okay? And therefore, you're not seeing much compromise. The last time I can look at our government and see a compromise was back in April or May when we were able to get our stimulus checks. But even that became highly debatable. It became delayed, and we're all still waiting on this second stimulus check, and that compromise has not been met on that particular matter. Now, all these other issues, health care, defense spending, all this stuff, there are not situations where we're seeing much compromise. But in order for a government to have success and a government to function, the necessity of compromise has to be put in place. Okay? It is important to realize that all compromises occur, but not all are good. All right, and not all of them are necessary. Okay? All right, individual freedom. Absolute freedom only exists in anarchy. That's where you have no laws to restrict you. You can do whatever you want, all right, in an anarchy style of government. Democracy does insist that each individual, though, be as free as possible, all right, within the framework of the law that's at hand. So within the Constitution, within our state laws, within our local laws, again, we have the freedom to do what we want, but to an extent, Okay, I can't just go and rob a bank and not have any consequences. All right, so again, there's a freedom, but underneath the umbrella of the law. Okay, there's a great quote by John F. Kennedy: "The rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man is threatened." Okay, so think about that one for a little bit. All right, human beings desire liberty and authority. A democratic government must find the balance between these two. Okay, so democracy and the free enterprise system, to kind of wrap things up today. All this within a economic context. The American economic enterprise is a free enterprise system. Okay, private ownership of capital goods. We invest. We have competition in our marketplace. Pepsi versus Coke. These are all things I'm actually talking about with my economic students. And the ability to become your own entrepreneur to drive the system. Okay, this is often referred to as capitalism. All right, and it is dictated by the law of supply and demand. Although a free market is present, all right, government involvement is also necessary. Okay, this leads to a concept known as a mixed economy. All right, protection of the public and private enterprises are the government's goals. Okay, this goes into this whole old concept of the monopolies back in the late 1800s that could do whatever they wanted without any restrictions. Now the government steps in and restricts some of these companies from becoming too large. However, now we are seeing companies like Amazon and Disney that are kind of tightroping that same line. So there does need to be some government involvement, although others would say no, there should not be any government involvement. And that leads to our last and final discussion here, where we have two trains of thought. And this is from a conservative and a liberal perspective. So a conservative perspective on this free enterprise system is that they believe in a laissez-faire, hands-off approach, meaning that the government should not be involved in business, and businesses should operate at full capacity without interference. Now, on the other side of the aisle, the liberal mindset is, hey, we believe in government involvement. This leads to a creation of programs to help those in economic need, and a creation of committees to oversee corrupt and illegal business activity. So when businesses are committing illegal acts, there should be some involvement. There should be some accountability for their actions. Okay? And as you can imagine, again, with both these mindsets, there does need to be compromise on economic issues. Okay? All right. So again, our foundations of democracy, they're in paper. They're written in ink. However, are we actually fully attaining this, achieving this? That's up for debate. And I want you guys to critically think about what we have put in place with our system. All right. So we're going to do this with Journal Log 4, and then we'll get ready for our test prep next week. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day.